Well, hi there, Tenno. This is Mako, and we're gonna be talking about Saryn. It's been a while since I've shown off my Saryn build and how I play her. Typically within Saryns, there are either a Spore, a Melee, or kind of in the middle. Now, the first really well-known Spore build is called the Maelstrom build, after the player who posted and derived it years ago. This is my kind of hybrid build of both a melee and a spore build. So you've got positive duration, decent efficiency, a pretty good amount of range, strength is pretty high, higher than you would typically see in a Saryn. Strength and duration are actually matched. HP is really high. One aspect of this is you're spreading your spores. They have a really high duration. They can outlast most other spores, and they deal a lot of damage per second. Now this one I would call my ESO build, but it is also kind of a mix. This is more of the Maelstrom build. And you're like, well, what does that mean? Well, a Maelstrom build primarily focuses on range and very low power strength. Now the reason for this, well, it's very quite. The reason you really focus on just putting your spores out is now you will notice the counter speed isn't really going up very quick, but it's got a good amount of duration onto it, so it'll keep spreading. That means over a length of time, this little weak spore will go out. So then a few seconds, we're up to 20 damage per second, which is reflected at 27 on the enemy. You'll see more spore builds like this, the, as I call them, Maelstrom builds, because it's just so primarily popular. Now typically you're always cast your lash and shoot them. Now, as we all know, power strength does not actually really affect Saryn in terms of mechanics in a negative way. Her 1 will always scale, as will her 4. The 4 is a viral base, meaning no matter what it does, it cuts their HP in half. As you can see, it's just dealing a nice amount of damage. The factor of power strength actually also affects the amount of these that are going to be corrosive versus raw damage. So if you have more power strength, they're going to hit corrosive rather than raw damage. It's an interesting mechanic in and of itself. So then you cast your viral. Makes him pretty easy to kill. Now, I use the Sobek with her primarily because of the factor of her 4. What does that mean? Well, what this weapon does with its augment acid shells is it'll take the raw total HP they had, distribute it as corrosive. So if you're using this with a miasma or a Maelstrom serum, it's rather effective because the viral cuts the HP in half. That HP in half does not affect the total max health. See, as it states, it takes the 45% enemy max health. So if you cut their health to 40%, or I'm sorry, 50% with viral, and you're hitting them with roughly 45% of their total health, that's gonna do some serious damage because they're already down half of their health. You're basically hitting them with nearly enough to kill them in one shot, thanks to the viral. That's a good synergy. Plus it's corrosive, so with a spore build or a maelstrom build or a miasma build altogether, whatever you want to call it, it cuts their HP in half such that you can pretty much one-shot them with just a shotgun while still spreading your spores, keeping the damage spreading. It makes sense. Now, Saryns are also really good at ESO, and for ESO you really don't even worry about energy, so just remove energy, maybe put energy siphon or corrosive projection, and you should be good. This is what I run with. Is there a real reason to why I didn't do a Maelstrom build? Well, I just feel more comfortable with a melee Spore Hybrid, which is primarily what I use. It's just this build. Now, it did take me 5 Forma to get up to this, but it's been very rewarding. Now, you could try to swap this out with Hunter Adrenaline, but this is pretty much maximized to take all these mods together with all their benefits, such as the sliding friction, as well as the little range it gives me. These two together are more than efficient enough, and, you know, it works. It goes so far as even to remove invincibility. Now, I used to use whips, as I see a lot of Saryns nowadays use, but I primarily like the gun blade, because I don't have to get close to spread my spores. Now, you can see how fast this ramps up, and this is just a small group. So one of the things that is useful about this Saryn build is you can cast it here, spread it there, and watch them spread. You're having to do more casts, but at the same time, is it bad? Does it really make a difference? Well, that's up to you, honestly. I'm also using a gas build on this, as you can clearly see. As I said, it's very effective. It'll also, due to the higher duration, the decay won't go away as quickly, but as you can see, it still goes pretty quick. Now, what is the benefit of a Spore Miasma build, or, you know, a melee Spore Miasma combo? Primarily, Lash, Toxic Lash to be specific, buffs and applies 100% toxic to both your primary and secondary and melee. Melees actually get double, though. So it's more beneficial for you to use that with it. The other concept is, look, see a little number up in the corner? 46%. That is added on top of the base block. So not only do I get 100% toxic applied to this and Lash to pop. By the way, for this, any slam attacks that do this type of ring effect will apply toxic on the slam effect. Rather nice. Yes, it is a very nice one, isn't it? For a Redeemer. Which is kind of strange because Gara and Korra will actually not pull melee damage from a Redeemer mod, which I don't understand. Gara is specifically built to take melee damage from Rivens, but doesn't from Redeemer. Will pull for anything else though. I don't understand it myself. So, Condition Overload, Drifting Contact, Primed Fury, Life Strike. Now you'd be wondering, why do I have this here? Well, it's just for that little extra status. Plus, if I do hit them, it's nice. And with the way game works, sometimes it will effectively let me keep the combo counter. So I don't know if it's doing it again at the time. Yeah, see it. So your bullets do count toward combo counter. So that's primarily the effect of why I used to do it. And then they took it away and then bring it back. Let's just see how quick this killed him. I'm invulnerable, so I'm just here more to let you see what's going on. Now you can see how quickly that strips on each shot. And it works from a range because it's also stealth. It allows my Saryn to be pretty nice in some spy missions because I can just spread the spores out without really alerting enemies. As I said on a previous video where I showed how to do Redeemer Prime, I just never got into the Corrosive Blast with it. I find I use Corrosive Blast on way too many melees, so it was nice to get a gas build. Always like the gas with Saryn. The other weapon I tend to play with is either the Dex Furious, just because I like them for Fashion Frame. Because Fashion Frame is endgame 10-0. But One of the oldest synergies I can think of if you needed a good thing to get energy and whatnot was the Embolist. Maybe the Furious. The Hystrix is another fun, powerful secondary. Lash doesn't apply to it in a correct way. It's kind of really weird. You could also get something like the Catch Moon. Weirdly enough, this Plinks doesn't work really well with Lash, and I'm not sure why. It actually sounded like a pretty interesting weapon. I used to run the Pox a lot. Let's see if they fixed it. And by fix, I mean no longer acting weird. So prior I used to do this and it would like just melt enemies that came into it. Yeah, prior that would like nearly have instantly kill these enemies, even 150s just getting into it, so that's kind of why I stopped using the Pox. By the way, if you're into Captura, using the Pox with Captura is rather useful. I mean, in a lot of ways, I like this current Saryn. I like the little counter effect that it scales infinitely. Downside is, I will tend to kill enemies faster than I normally would be able to in the old Saryn concept. Doing something with this, I know. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of these new kit guns. They can be fun, they can be powerful. Not a fan of them, honestly speaking. This one's really good with multi-shot. It's got a nice little AoE on shot, which also spreads viral, or radiation, which is a nice one-shotter. Now, the interesting thing I don't think about spores currently is prior there used to be infinite spores per target, which was what used to cause CTDs and lag and all that other stuff. Now they only generate 3 spores per target, and since there's usually on like 35 enemies or 40 some enemies on a map at a time, that heavily restricts the lag capacity of Saryn's spore. Didn't help that the recent fix we got a few months back, which I'm not really happy with, is we buffed her miasma, but only if you have spores on. But they have the total damage, so in effect, they doubled it and then halved it, so it's actually back to right where it used to be. Whereas on PC, they for a time had it to where it could deal double damage fully functional. Now we got pretty much your miasma doesn't work even what it used to be unless you have spores on an enemy. So it's a mix of these nerf buffs they've been doing lately, which is meh to a lot of players. It's not endearing it to us in any way. Now this used to be really good just because of the amount of range you could get, plus you do gas. But as I said, they've nerfed how Toxic Clash works, they nerfed miasma. Oh, it's still strong. Don't get me wrong. But where before I would do this and these enemies would instantly melt, That takes a good amount of time. So I mean, where before I would do this, and anything in this pass would just pretty much die due to the amount of gas ticks from Lash and Spore. It kind of nerfed it. I'm not overly thrilled with Spore becoming corrosive. It's useful. At the same time, corrosive is flat against most damage types, which is nice. But corrosive actually falls off faster than gas or toxic in terms of damage per second in higher end game. And that's why I use the Sobek. Well, sorry about all the complaining, but I just thought I'd give some, you know, how I see her and how she's been working pretty well for me. Ooh, this fell off. So it's just, again, if you also wanted to see the color palette I'm using, I have quite a few setups. This one's kind of my D.E. Danielle tribute. I actually had to try to draw her Saryn once as a thank you to her. Anyway, so there's that. So thanks for watching. Hope it helps. See you later.